Welcome along, Bryce. Thanks for joining me.
Cheers, Emma.
Anybody watching, can you please introduce yourself and tell me a bit more about who you are?
Great. So, named Bryce Hamer. I'm working out of Tauranga. Have been here for many years now, as you can tell by the face here. But many years ago, got involved through golf with New Zealand Golf, and have had the pleasure of working with some tremendous people and involved there. And that's one of the main things about the golf is the caliber and the learning experiences that we can gather through working with these people. My role is a physiotherapist there, so I'm a physiotherapy service provider for New Zealand Golf. So we work as a team. So generally the nutritionist, high up there is sports psychology, and we've got coaches and the whole team around these people. So my role as physio, we look at screenings, seeing where the body swing connection fits, and assess people, see where they're maybe weak, strong, tie that in with the other providers and enabling them to make swing changes based on that.
Yep.
So we're all trying to give the same message. So it's all about positivity and making sure we're dealing with and enhancing the opportunity for these people to become good people, which will make good golfers.
So that's working from amateurs all the way through to that pro stage, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, New Zealand Golf makes a great job of supporting people as they come through. So from a regional level, and obviously the better players from that regional level will come through into camps as development squads, and then they go into the higher performance areas as well. And then a lot of them, as a necessity, need to experience the competition and the travel and all the peripheral hassles, I guess, that go with being a professional golfer. So helping them transition into pro golf, and then some will get some assistance in that early stage of their career, because that's a tremendously hard phase, swapping from top amateur through into the professional ranks.
Absolutely. So I thought today's a good chance for us to talk about how, as physiotherapists, we help with golfers, but also my background and your also love for looking at how that we breathe as a fundamental or foundation really for all of us, but how that links into golf, just to start off with. And then we're going to do a few more videos and series to help other people understand other elements that you can work on to, get the most out of your golf at any stage. Because it's, I've worked with pro golfers now and your normal Joe Blogs, run-of-the-mill golfers that are weekend warriors. And sometimes the things we see even at that elite level have been carried through from an early phase of habits, mindset, body patterns that are not as effective as they could be.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the breathing's massive, isn't it? As we've discussed, and many people know, and I think people assume they're breathing fine because they're alive. And that's where it starts. And I would say 99% of the golfers that we both probably deal with, if you say to them, where's the breath fit in your swing, none of them have even considered it. So, as we've talked, and I think the understanding there, the person needs to be well. So that's the breathing well all the time, isn't it?
Yeah.
Then under stress, so, between shots and all those sort of things. And then there's phase two, and then certainly over the golf ball and during that swing, what happens in that, and the breathing effect on not only the breathing, but the way the body moves and how that person feels, isn't it?
Absolutely. For me, because I've been lucky enough last year to travel on tour with one of the top New Zealand golfers, and that was, he was very open. Josh was very open to looking at how the breath was brought into the body, particularly to help mind, to help just clearing the mind in many ways, which you can't clear, but you can quieten, and then you can use it to help, particularly on between shots, like you said, and putting. Putting's one of the biggest areas that I see the real shift in it.
Yes.
And like you said, it's not every breath is equal, and so while we're breathing right now, when you, depending on what's happening off the golf course, is going to really impact how you feel on the golf course. And that was one of my biggest kind of aha moments when I was sitting in a bus driving to the airport in Guangzhou back with a lot of the golfers, and I had this conversation with one of the top guys from, is he Denmark? Norway, I think. No, okay. Denmark. And I said, look, we were just talking about the reason why I was there on tour with, as a personal physio. One of the golfers compared to the other guys just use the tour physio that's there and sees hundreds of people there.
Yeah.
And I said to him, well, how do you think, what makes a difference between that top player and that someone that's just not quite making it? And he said, part of it is actually what's happening at home, how you feel off the course and everything else in your life, those other components that will mean you're going to be successful.
Yeah.
And from the point of view of then how that relates into the physical element, for me it makes complete sense, because our mind and our emotions so connected, but we don't see that, we don't understand often how that influence occurs. Yep. And it'll come through particularly on the emotional state. And so one way that you can at least change that is the way that you breathe actually can change the emotions you experience. Often we think it's all top down. Yep. And it's not. It's very much bottom up, which is the kind of that superpower that golfers can finally realise.
Yeah, and I think people are going to have their stresses. It's normal, isn't it, to some extent? And at the end of the day, breathing's a massive part of how you deal with that. So the stimulus for player A, 5 units of stress, and they deal with it in a beautiful way, breathing part of their strategy. And player B, 5 units of stress, exactly the same, but doesn't deal with it well at all, and breathing being part of their lack of strategy.
No, I love that analogy, and for me, I talk about bandwidth a lot. And so when it comes to, a long life as we go through, our bandwidth can be shortened of how much we can tolerate, our resilience. And that will then mean that we tip over a lot quicker into that stress, flight, fight or freeze mode when we're playing, when we're under pressure in other parts of life. So learning to lengthen your bandwidth is really important. And the good thing is it can shorten over time when you have experiences where it's trauma, grief, travel, stress, whatever's going on, COVID-19, those things all add up to it right now.
Yeah.
We'll get a little bit shorter of the bandwidth.
Yeah.
But that resilience and tolerance, because stress, like we said, is actually also a powerful tool. It can be used for good. And the more that you train your baseline to get actually a higher threshold, then that makes a big difference as well to the body.
Yeah. And with the help of you and the input that I can put in as well around the breathing, you get the people, isn't it, who aren't breathing well. So, okay, you educate and you train. So now they can breathe well, but are they breathing well? They're capable, but are they? And that's where, to become an expert for these players, that's training and practice, and it's another skill for them, isn't it?
I think that's important, even though you can do one breath in a moment and you feel better for it to change it, to actually train a habit, sometimes it can be 6 months. Like when you change your golf swing, when you change the way you're putting, it takes time and repetition to actually implement it to be unconscious instead of this consciously riding it. Because the other thing is, even though we're changing the habit of the breath, we still might have the triggers that are driving it to change. Yes. Until you identify those triggers in your life, and that's why it's important with a psychologist, with your coach, with your team, nutritionist. It can be all those things that can be triggering that stress response that makes the body change the way it breathes.
Yeah, and that lovely webinar you did the other day, which I can recommend for everybody as well, those triggers are important, isn't it? And from a patient point of view, they may get their knee pain when they walk past the place they fell over and got their knee injury. So there's that part of it, and you mentioned the other day, and it's a classic, isn't it? The person who stands on the tee on the 7th, and for the last 2 rounds, they've put it in the water.
Yeah.
So they may have been playing beautifully, but that memory and its influence over the breathing at that point is going to be potentially massive. And
absolutely. And that's that visceral reaction that we don't even realize is kind of happening. It's that second brain, that kind of gut reaction.
Yeah.
And it's so oblivious. It's, we often think we're controlling it from here, but we're so not. We get controlled from that gut, from our heart as well. Our heart has a big influence over the way that we're connecting. And I didn't talk about that as much in that webinar, the workshop that I did, the live workshop for golfers. But that's got a really important part too. So our synchronicity between our heart and our breath, and that vagal tone is so important. And you've actually got to strengthen that over a long time for it to become more regular. And there's some great tools that you can use. One thing called Heart Math. Have you looked at that at all?
No, tell me more about that. That sounds great.
Heart Math is great. It's a great tool. It actually is, especially for golfers, because it gives them, and for sounds really sexist, but men, they lead that visual cue. So you can use this wee clip that goes on your ear, so Heart Math, and it's looking at the variability, the heart rate variability, and which is a key indicator for your parasympathetic and your sympathetic nervous system. So your autonomic nervous system, which is running behind the scenes and which your breathing is part of, but you can also like override that system a little bit with changing your breath. And so if your heart and your heart rate variability becomes quite regular and jumpy, then that tolerance and bandwidth is going to go down. You're going to stimulate that nervous system. So using Heart Math, which is with that kind of biofeedback tool, using a computer at the same time, you can actually work to make that smoother and more regular, which is really powerful. And they kind of, the way they look at it, and this is why I work a lot with the golf as well, is on that headspace. Even though I'm a physical therapist, what we're looking at there is the thoughts and mindset, and on then how it will change the body's response. And so the part of that I find really powerful is the things like your gratitude and your negative thoughts, and that kind of balancing act of where you are with the thought process. So we know from your heart and from the research on that, and the Heart Math research, is that you actually, I think I can't remember how much, but you actually send off an electromagnetic field from your heart.
Okay, right.
Powerful. And they've measured it in research. I haven't looked at it for a long time, but it's something significant, like a few meters around you that you're actually that you radiate out. And so if you think about that, then your heart frequency, which is ticking away and doing its thing, which is influenced by the breath and the body and the mind, is actually going to impact somebody else's frequency around you. And so we have this huge knock-on effect. It's why I, when I'm on tour with my golfer, I'm usually pretty like upbeat and happy, because I've got to give out that for him to kind of absorb it, to kind of take that on board. And so the powerful thing is you walk into a room and you don't actually realise someone's grumpy or upset, and you have it with patience, and you're like, oh man, what's with you, mate? And we have to kind of work to try to bring that their frequency up, but it's so under the radar you don't even realise. But there's things that you can do to train that, and so they look at it with meditation and mindfulness practice as a way, and you can do that collectively as groups. Like when you train the heart and the breath and the mind together, then you get this even bigger change, and it's powerful with groups. So something to think about with the golfers. It's one thing that I use is even just that gratitude practice, which seems so simple, but before you get out on the course, what you shift your mindset, your heart, your energy, your breath by just coming back to those things that you're grateful for.
That behaviour is huge, isn't it? Like you mentioned again the other day, the smile that can change things, and there's pretty good evidence around posture. Taking someone, putting them into poor posture, isn't it, and watching their testosterone plummet and cortisol for stress elevate, and then take them immediately and pop them in great posture, good strong postures, and watch cortisol, the stress indicator, come down, and the testosterone, assertiveness, confidence elevate. So just based on posture changes.
Yeah, and that's the research. I love that from I think it was Amy Cuddy's research that looked at that. Power postures. The only thing is that, and it frustrates me because I believe that's the way it influences it, that it actually does change those, but they haven't been able to replicate that research to get those changes. But what I think from the breath point of view and the muscle point of view, and then thinking about translating into golf, is why that's so important, is that diaphragm and that body's not in the right position, then you can't get that activation into your calm part of your nervous system. So that will have a hormonal effect, and then it will change muscle tone, and it has a whole cascade through there. So while sometimes you hear there's research and people and experts say, posture does not matter and it's not going to influence it. But, you do something for 20 years over time. We haven't done the research to influence, if we hold bad postures for that amount of time. we see them in the physio clinic and we go, it's finding the straw that broke the camel's back. We've got to try and fix it and unwind. But those postures do influence so many aspects, particularly the way that we breathe. And you can actually, again, you can change those postures then to change the movement pattern and then the emotion. So sometimes it's kind of finding where you have control and power.
Yes. Yeah. It's finding that link, because it's all linked, isn't it? And so it's finding that first intervention.
Yeah.
And look at it. And I think as a go-to, the breathing is a great place to start. Because the less than ideal breathing pattern, which may pop that shoulder, which we know if the hands come away from the ball, at that first phase of the swing, then a cascade of things will happen from there on in. So you can talk about trying to get this guy down and train that from a coaching point of view, where the reality is to start at the diaphragm, or start at the breathing, and it may well sort a lot of that stuff out. So.
Exactly. Looking at it from the swing point of view, I find it fascinating working with great coaches and seeing then when you could show that, working with the team, as you show the muscle pattern of that using the pecs, or if you're worried or fearful and you grip and you turn in and you internally rotate, how that changes the position of the forearms and closes it over, or changes the whole biomechanics from the rotation and through the thoracic cage as well.
Absolutely.
So it's like this kind of, you've got to get that foundation right. And I think that's what we're trying to kind of promote at the moment as well.
Yeah.
So, And so you're seeing with people in your clinic at Bay Physiotherapy?
So Bay Physiotherapy Centre. So, we're working with golfers through there, and obviously general public and sports people of all levels. Breathing's always a part of it. So looking at, in the power sports, and that, the breathing role in the musculoskeletal field, as well as that wellness, anxiety, stress things. So, the diaphragm's role that you've talked about in terms of, lumbar control, lumbar core, strength of diaphragm, because the diaphragm does fatigue too, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like any muscle in the body, it needs to be trained. It needs to be trained under load. And there's lots of different phases, which we might talk about in the next videos about things that people can do as well. But the first step is always to get the pattern right. Yeah. And then you can start to load and strengthen and then look at the other big picture of it. Which is really good.
Yeah, and I think, you emphasising the other day too around the 360 degrees, versus the classic, abdomen forward sort of stuff, which is fine. But that 360 degrees, I think, is an area a lot of people will forget about. And getting into that posterior portion, you get that lovely lumbar core activation, or enhanced activation by getting into that back corners there.
So let's talk about that a bit more in the next one, because I want to talk about the muscle component with the golf, and then how that influences muscles, because I think that 360, that for me is a game changer when it comes to golf swing, and particularly putting, but it depends on people and who you are. But if people want to learn more, obviously they can work with you as well online, and then I work in on the online space as well. I have my own online breathing course, but I do live workshops for both golfers and for normal Junior Joe blogs public. But my 90-minute golf webinar workshop is, you can learn a lot, as you found, Bryce, that even as a golfer and a physio, it's just pausing and looking at all the components, and getting the tools to start practicing from there.
Certainly recommend that, because people can go back on and see that again. Or you're running another one, aren't you?
So every 2 weeks at the moment, I'll be having my golf webinar, so people can come in or watch the replay as well for the next week following that. So it's a great way of refreshing it, and then practicing some of the techniques here, and then always coming back on. But I think that I had one of the ladies that joined us the other day, Libby. She sent me an email afterwards, and she'd already played a round of golf, and she said it was the most calm and relaxed, and actually one of her best results, and she'd been playing for a while. So she was really stoked with, the way that the breathing, and she was so focusing a lot during the game, but it didn't put her off.
No, fantastic. And you tie it back into the psychology stuff, and working a lot with Dave Galbraith with with New Zealand Golf, and so it all just fits. It all just fits nicely. So but if we had to put emphasis in anywhere, I I guess some places people can do less and manage okay, but I don't think breathing's one of those. You know, it's just far too powerful for people not to become very good at. And, you know, what we mentioned before is, can they? Some people can, but are they? And then the trap at this stage, I think, for people's learning is they may learn and understand, but can they? You know, so knowledge is fine, but being able to do it's the next stage, isn't it?
Yeah, and we work with so many, even at all the different levels. You have the top coaches, you have the golf pros, you have the top gear, but you may not even look at the fundamentals, like even how is your body functioning. And so working with any physiotherapist to actually get like that assessment and mobility, because there's so many like building blocks to get that right in the body.
That's right. And I think golf's a fairly unique sport in terms of, you know, if I'm playing a game of rugby as an example and I throw a terrible pass, we may still win the game. You know, like in the big influence of the match, it may not have a great impact. But in golf, you know, if I miss that 3-foot putt or I slash a drive into the trees, you know, 4 days later, you know, that's still counted and it's there forever, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, if we're talking minute changes of performance over 4 days, this determines winning and no one knowing even that you were there. Breathing offers a bit more than that too, you know. So
I think you nailed it there, particularly when we're looking at those pro golfers and when we're on tour. And that was my big awakening, was actually that experience of, you know, you've got to travel, so international travel. You've got to deal with a new course. You don't know the course. The time restraints. You've got jet lag. You've got all these elements, different foods, things that will influence how that body is going to perform. And so you've got to use all your resources to get your body into feeling good and feeling calm before you go and perform at that elite level. So powerful stuff. All right, so I'll add some little wee info into the video recordings for people. Then if they want to find out more about your clinic and the webinars and workshops, then they can. But you can always go to thebreatheffect.com and the webinars tabs up top. Sounds good. All right. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. If anywhere in there's my Instagram, the Bay Physiotherapy Centre, but also golf focused physio.
Cool. Perfect.
There's an Instagram thing. All right.
Thanks.